Alright, so we're going to take a look at Annihilation, which immediately follows off where we left last time, at the end of Active Phase 1. So after he finishes casting it, he reappears in the north, just above A there. And so the party will stack on the left of where he reappears, next to the marker essentially, just a little bit north of that. And then Weight of the Lands will happen first, and we'll just dodge right, and then we'll dodge back left, at which point we will eat this Ifrit stack marker here. It's just on a random person, so it's important to stay stacked for that. Meanwhile, Garuda is in the south, and she will do one of the Meso High Tethers on a random player. So my advice for that is whoever's picking it up, so probably O'Seal, just sort of while you're dodging left-right, or right-left rather, just make sure you're the person in the back of the party, and then you'll pick that up easily. And then after the Ifrit stack occurs, essentially, and with the last way to land there, essentially we split into 3, but really 4 groups. So the first group we'll look at is myself, and that is the person who picks up the Meso High Tether. So they'll just move south towards C and eat the tether by themselves. The second group will be essentially both tanks to intercept the first orb here. So Ultima is spawning orbs at this stage. If I'm not mistaken, they always spawn on his front in the right here. So the tanks will just dodge back right and intercept that together. Meanwhile, the party is going to dodge up to the to the left behind Ultima, so the back left essentially, or north west, if that's easier to understand. Meanwhile, the healers are going to go directly west and wait to see which one gets Searing Wind. The player who does get Searing Wind will rotate around south, while the other healer will go join the party in the northwest. So the tanks have eaten the orbs there, the Meso High Tether is resolving, and Searing Wind goes out at the same time. And then Garuda will jump away, and she will cast Feather Rain as she does. So there's another orb there, which I believe at that point Dragon is eating the orbs. But actually, I think they might have eaten them both together. But regardless, that doesn't matter too much. There is just another orb there, so one of the tanks will have to eat it, if not both of them. Meanwhile, the party is hanging out here. So Ifrit is going to dash next, as well as Titan is going to cast a Landslide. One thing to note about Titan's Landslide here is that it is not baited. He will just always do it in front of him, directly in front of him. Just note that the primals are still awoken, so the usual mechanics follow. You have to dodge into the Landslide, and the Ifrit dash will be followed by the plus, essentially. So if it's on an intercardinal, he will always be on an intercardinal. It's just random which one, which means after his dash, you need to end up in an intercardinal, as well as dodging into Titan's Landslide. So this specific pattern is what Kaze would have called easy Ifrit back in the day. And that's because it is the easier of the two possibilities, essentially. So Titan will cast his Landslide, Ifrit will dash, the party just literally dodges into Ifrit's, into the Landslide, and then they're safe from the plus as well. That follows up by Garuda casting this big giant tornado, which restricts the size of the arena, and keep in mind that one of the healers still has Searing Wind there. So you don't have a lot of room to move around. Meanwhile, while we've dodged in to this safe spot, Dragon has gone off and eaten the third orb by himself. So the party is just hanging out here. Dragon will stay there just to eat the remaining orb, while the healer is directly south with Searing Wind. So there is another Meso High Tether here, which the Searing Wind healer picks up, and that is why both healers will need a Thermal Low. It's because one of them will randomly have to pick up the Meso High Tether here. And you have to stay here because the Feather Rain will go off there, as well as Tank Purge. And that is the end of Annihilation, essentially. So this is active phase 2 that he's going into now, which we will look at later. But I think the best way to sort of explain the orbs and why it sort of matters who eats it, well, not specifically who, but how many people eat it. We'll look at the mechanic that it ties into, essentially. So you probably haven't, or maybe you have, but something that I've sort of glossed over is this ultimate Aether gauge down here. And when this fills up, Ultima will cast Enrage. So that's essentially what that is doing. And the reason why Ultima had such a tight DPS check back in the day is because deaths would contribute to that. If you died, his gauge would fill up by 4. Whenever he casts an ability, his gauge will fill up by 4. And also, every time someone eats the orb, and the orb is shared damage, so it's not a bad idea to have more people eat it. However, the more people who eat it, the more the gauge fills up. So I think it fills up by 1 point per person. So you're sort of always racing against this gauge. However, not only does it help the healing ever so slightly, but a little bit all the same, it also helps this mechanic that follows suppression. So it's a little bit away, it's after active phase 2 and suppression. But we'll look at this mechanic now. So after suppression, immediately after suppression, he will recast Ultima, which you tank LB. And then he follows up by casting Aetheric Boom, which will knock you back, which you want to happen. And the party will effectively split into 2 groups, with the tanks on one side and the party on the other side. And it'll knock you back into these pairs of orbs that spawn. And the goal is to essentially eat the orbs. The first one you'll get knocked back into is just how you set it up. And then run over and take the next orb. So the tanks will run over and take the ones over there, which you can sort of just barely see, while the party will run over and take these ones here. And the number of people who eat the orbs during Annihilation decides the distance between the pairs of orbs, which gives you more time before they intercept, which would wipe the raid, and gives you more time to eat them. See, you didn't have a lot of time, essentially, with the strat that we did back in the day, which was 2-2-1-1. Police recommends 3-3-1-1. It doesn't essentially matter, really. Just as long as you have enough time to eat the orbs here. So we'll probably do 2-2-1-1, I think. But yes, that is why it matters how many people eat the orbs during Annihilation. But yeah, so we'll look at Active Phase 2 next. So Active Phase 2 begins by Ultima disappearing immediately after Annihilation finishes, and then he'll just immediately reappear in the center. Note that the healer who had Searing will still have it, and he will have one more explosion of the Searing, essentially. So he will stay south until that Searing goes off, and it's important that the party stays north. You definitely don't want to be any lower than those that center line of markers there. And you'll all have to come in fairly close, so the healer will have to come in because of this Eye of the Storm. So it's important that you remember to stay north until after that last burst. And then everyone can sort of stack up. And he will cast Homing Laser on the tank with the second, or the player with the second highest aggro, so you want to make sure that's all sorted. Followed by another Eye of the Storm, and then Radiant Plumes. So really easy to dodge as soon as the Radiant Plumes, well, more specifically, as soon as the Eye of the Storm happens, you just dodge straight out and then dodge back in. And then I believe the tank takes, he takes Diffractive Laser after the Radiant Plumes, essentially. So the main tank just needs to be off by himself, and that is just a moderate tank buster that has no cast time. He cleaves as well, so he's going to be by himself. Otherwise, you'll hit the party. Followed by another Eye of the Storm, and this Eye of the Storm has a Vulcan Burst with it, which is just the knockback from Ifrit. Back in the day, you had to shield through it. As you'll see here, everyone has shields up, we can just shorecast it. So it'll be significantly easier to deal with, especially for the tank who is still taking autos. There is another Vulcan Burst, which we may see if DPS is low because we've had deaths or whatever, but stereotypically we probably won't see it. We'll probably skip it. But there is another Vulcan Burst, and if we do see it, just note that that one will probably have to be shielded through because Shorecast and the like won't be up. And, you know, maybe even shielding it wouldn't be a bad idea just for the extra, you know, safety net. Safety net never hurts. It doesn't take much to shield through a single sucker or a shake. Whatever is free will do. Yeah, so then after the Vulcan Burst, he will cast another homing laser. So, again, tank with second aggro. And then into another Vulcan Burst alongside another Eye of the Storm. So this is the second one I said you would have to shield. However, if you push him below 50%, he will immediately cast Ultimate Suppression. So it's totally possible to skip that. We skipped that back in the day a lot of the times. And considering the DPS we've been having running it now in Shadowbringers, we will probably skip that too, if not a lot more. So yeah. But if you do see it after the Eye of the Storm and the Vulcan Burst that happens there, he does one more diffractive laser. Again, just tank buster without a cast, essentially, a mini tank buster. He will then cast Ultimate Suppression either way, whether you see it or not. And yeah, that's Active Phase 2. Like with Active Phase 1, you know, maybe there's little parts here and there that can, you know, but it's honestly not that bad. Like, it really isn't. Most of it's pretty self-explanatory. You sort of see it and know what you need to do. There's no tricks. But yeah. Next we'll look at Ultimate Suppression, I guess. So I look forward to that.